Hi, my name is Eric Ray. I'm the curator of the Museum of the Coastal Bend. And I'm here with Kurt House. He's one of our lenders for the Winning the West exhibition, which is open through August 30th. Kurt, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Okay, Eric, I'm glad to be here. I'm a resident of Lavo County, which is nearby. Started collecting arms and memorabilia from the Coastal Bend, South Texas, 50 years ago, and still studying, trying to learn about it. I worked on my PhD, completed everything but my dissertation in anthropology at Southern Methodist University in 1975, physical anthropology.
So why don't you tell us a little bit about the guns you have here on loan to us for this exhibit?
Okay, well, we've got first long arms, a blunderbuss, and that's kind of an unusual gun, short with a big bell muzzle, of course, and then we have several other long arms, a couple of Madrid pieces maybe, and then we have short arms pistols, including a little muff pistol, a percussion, made for the Spanish market by the Belgians. And then we have a real petite, unusual Michelet lock.
The short pistol.
Defense pistol, yeah. Very petite.
So you mentioned defense. There were a lot of guns here in the history of the Coastal Bend. There have been a lot of guns, a lot of people with guns. Why do you think people have had guns? I know that's really what our exhibit is about, but why do you think people have had guns in the Coastal Bend?
Well, several reasons, which you cover well here in the exhibit. Originally, of course, during a confrontation with the Spanish for warfare, and then secondly for defense when various factions were fighting each other, and thirdly for hunting to procure game for the family table.
So it's important to say a lot of these guns were for fun as well. Guns are fun for people now, but they've also enjoyed target shooting throughout the past.
Yes, you know, guns play an important part in the history of this whole country, as you well know, Eric, and originally our founding fathers ensured the right to keep and bear arms for those purposes. They didn't know how long it might be before the citizenry might have to rise up and rebel against the government again. They just finished it, so they wanted to guarantee that right. And then, of course, they also use them for hunting, and long ago people been collecting guns, way back there. Gun collecting was kind of a gentleman's hobby, a little bit probably expensive, confined to the aristocracy maybe, but it was considered really neat to have representatives of all kinds of ancient arms and armor, things like that.
Well, it might be interesting to people. They might come to the exhibit and see, well, you know, all these guns from other places. You've got a lot of guns that were made in Spain. You've got some guns that were made in France and England and Belgium. There wasn't a big gun manufacturing business here in Texas, so they had to get those guns from other places. As you mentioned, could be quite expensive, which I think that's one of the reasons we have so many of these guns here today is they're expensive enough you don't throw them out. You keep passing them down, and they wind up with people such as yourself.
You know, it's an amazing thing about a gun as a material artifact. Nobody ever threw them away. Mm-hmm. They were always valuable. They were valuable when they made them. They were passed down through families. They continue to be valuable for various reasons, in many cases historical reasons, like if a gun is inscribed to a historical person, or if it were used in a historic event, like the gunfight at the OK Corral. You know, there are many reasons to collect, save, and preserve these guns in our culture today.
What do you think fascinates people about guns so much? They're powerful objects, both physically and that they can kill people, they can bring down game, they can feed your family, but there's also something about people are drawn to looking at them. People are drawn to touching them and having them. What do you think it is inherently about a gun that's so mesmerizing? Well,
you know, you brought up a good point, especially guns have always been considered valuable. For example, in modern day times, you can have thieves pass over silverware, but they'll always steal guns, you know, because everybody values guns. As for the reasons, you go all the way from art. Many of them are gold-plated and fabulous embellishments with ivory and, you know, precious materials and metals. and so you may consider them as art. But I think the main reason is what you touched on, Eric, power. Guns represent power over your fellow man. You know, the old saying about Colts was that God may have created man, but Colonel Colt made them equal. So you have a little bitty sawed-off guy mad at a big, tough guy who in pre-gunpowder days would have easily overpowered him. He could no longer do that after guns arrived. So it gives you power, and I think people are fascinated by that.
I think so too. I think that's one of the reasons that guns have been so instrumental here, is that there have been so many opportunities for people, so many needs for people to overpower both the land and overpower each other. There's been so much conflict here that I think it's only natural that guns play such an important role, and still play an important role, and still a very contentious role in society. We haven't quite figured out what we want to do with that much power in everyone's hand, I think, as a society.
Well, you know, most Americans believe, and they've done various surveys lately, but most Americans believe that guns are essential to preserving our liberty today. And it's probably always been that way. I think they're still important today, and of course education and training of young people, I think, is the answer. And we neglect that oftentimes these days. Instead of shielding young people from guns, I think we should educate them and have target shooting and things like they used to do. I mean, colleges, even high schools and everything used to have target shooting programs, shooting scholarships, Olympic gun events, which they still do, you know, the cross-country deal where you've got to ski 20 miles and swim and then try to shoot a gun, which is pretty taxing physically. And it does measure a man's prowess and ability.
Well, one of the things that I tried to do when I was writing the exhibit, telling the story of the exhibit, is focus rather than on a series of old guns going from very old to less old, which is really only so interesting for so long. I tried to look at themes, the reasons that people have either needed or thought they needed to be armed throughout the history of this area, and then the impact that that's continued to have on society and culture here. And one of the things I found as I was doing the research and as I was putting all this together is that it was more or less universal. That we've got pictures of people on taking guns to their honeymoon to go hunting. There's a great picture of a young lady around the turn of the 20th century with a gun by the Aransas River. There's pictures of Native Americans with guns. There's, you know, certainly the introduction of gunpowder changed Native culture immensely, helped some of those settlers, I guess, even the odds against a vastly superior Native force. Certainly, I think it may have impacted Native culture more than it impacted anybody else's culture. And then there are kids. There's kids with their Red Ryder BB guns that's still a toy people buy today, are BB guns for their children.
Don't put your eye out.
No, he's exactly right.
I love that movie.
And so that's been one of the things that's really shown through, is the enduring nature of these and sort of the universal appeal.
And it cross-cuts gender, age, you know, even ability to economic, socioeconomic status, so forth, women, children, and guns. Knowledge, experience, and skill with firearms has always been considered important in this country, and I hope it always does.